Here, episode 3 of Generational Talent. I am Chris, here with my son Matthew, and we're going to talk some Week 8 NFL football. So last week, Matthew, we talked about how there wasn't going to be a lot of great matchups this week, and as we know, the NFL, any given Sunday, anybody can beat anybody, and it was. We had some very exciting games, some very exciting finishes. Let's start with the Sunday night game. Cowboys. Your thoughts on that? Playing your rival, the 49ers.
Yeah, I was telling Ethan and you the other, before the game started, I think this might have been the first time that I was rooting for the Cowboys and the Bills in the same week. Obviously, the Bills were playing Seattle, but I think Cowboys could be looking at a top 10 pick. I think that they are looking at maybe a 7-win season. If you look at their schedule, it looks really tough. They're going to play the Giants again, so they're going to go to win there. They play the Panthers, so that's another win. What are they sitting at right now? 3-4. So that's 5 wins. They play the Buccaneers, but that's kind of later in the season. So Buccaneers should have Mike Evans back. So that's a tough game, and I think Baker is playing better than Dak. But then they play a lot of teams that have winning records and are playing really good right now. They still have Washington twice. They still have Eagles twice. So I think that they could be looking at a top 10 pick for the first time since I can remember.
Well, they,
minus the Dak injury here.
Yeah, they had a Dak injury. The year that the Commanders or the Washington football team went 79 and won the division. I'm pretty sure they probably picked in at least the top 12 or 13. This is my thing. 2 players can't make you win, and that's what they've got right now. They have the majority of their money wrapped up in Dak and CD, and they can't get on the same page. They started getting on the same page a little bit at the end of that game, but the problem with the Cowboys is they can't stop the run, and they can't run the ball.
Yeah,
and that's a recipe in the NFL for disaster.
Yeah,
if you can't, they are great. And what happened last year is if they got out to an early lead, then their defense could pin their ears back, go after the quarterback, Micah, Lawrence, they could do that. Now they're behind, so they have to throw the ball, and their defense can't stop the run. So if other teams are ahead, all they're doing is just running it right down their throat.
Yeah,
and even if Micah comes back, he's not in the, unless they put him in middle linebacker, he's not going to stop the run.
Yeah. I remember seeing a stat, I think it was like a year or two ago, about Dak Prescott. And when he throws, I believe it's less than 30 times, he has a significantly better win percentage than when he has to throw more than 30 times. He's a B-plus quarterback. He's not your Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, but he's making that kind of money.
He's not that guy that can. He's not going to. Well, this is the other thing with the Cowboys. When they play a physical team, and the 49ers are a physical team that punches you in the mouth, they have a problem winning those type of. The Packers last year came out, punched them right in the mouth. So when they're playing those types of teams, they fold.
Another big problem for the Cowboys, in my opinion, is they don't have a home field advantage. Ever since they lost to Green Bay in the playoff game, they haven't won a single home field game. And that used to be their big thing, was that we can win at home. We're going to win at home. We're going to defend AT&T Stadium. But they lost the Packers playoff game, and then they've lost 3 this year to the Saints, and all 3 of them were blowouts to the Saints, to the Lions, and then even though the Ravens game looked close, it was a blowout to the last quarter.
Yeah, the Cowboys technically had it, just like the 49ers game, they technically had a chance to win the game towards the end.
Yeah.
But even in this 49ers game, if you look, the 49ers are playing more man-to-man, and Dak and CD are connecting. And then all of a sudden, when it got tough, when they're like, hey, we need a drive to try to go, win this game, Dak just folds like a cheap suit.
Yeah, he went 4 and out on that important drive right at the end.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I mean, I think 7 wins is probably, listen, 7-10 last year got you the 10th pick.
Yeah.
So if you're I think 7 wins is their ceiling right now. I just don't see them winning more than that at the moment, because it's just, like you said, 2 games against the Eagles, 2 games against the Commanders, a tough Bengals team.
You got the Bills.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's talk about my team now. Well, I should say the team that my team beat this weekend, the Jets. Now, I can tell you, there's no more special feeling than beating the Jets for a Patriots fan, other than, winning a Super Bowl, which, we have 6 of.
Yeah.
But my thing with Aaron Rodgers is done. He is cooked.
He's washed.
That team, that is a roster that they have in New Jersey. That is not a team.
Yep.
A
bunch of
even the 2008 Brett Favre led 38-year-old Brett Favre started the season 8-3. Now, he got hurt, banged up towards the end of that season. He also showed things that he wasn't supposed to show to some Jets employees. But they finished 9-7. So they went 1-4 down the stretch after starting out 8-3. Yeah. Missed the playoffs completely. Lost to Chad Pennington, who they got rid of to bring in Brett Favre. Lost to him. But the Jets team also reminds me a little bit of and for you older people, the 2000 Washington Redskins. Let me tell you a little bit about this team, okay? The 99 Redskins were the first team that Dan Snyder, the first year that Dan Snyder owned the team. They came out of nowhere. They won a division. They went, I think, 10-6, won a division, won a playoff game, all right, and was a bad snap away from going to the NFC Championship game in 1999. They, Matt Turk and Dan Turk. Dan Turk was the long snapper. His brother, Matt Turk, was the punter and the holder. It was a bad snap. They missed the field goal. They lost to Tampa. And Tampa went on to lose to the St. Louis Rams, a great show on turf. I'm not saying that the Redskins would have beat the Rams, but you never know. But then, in that offseason, Snyder decides to go out and sign Bruce Smith, coming off, who's a Bills legend. He did get the record later in his career with the Redskins for all-time sacks. Signed Jeff George, who was a former number 1 overall pick and was one of the biggest busts in NFL history. He had an arm that could throw it, 100 yards, but he had a 10-cent head. Signed Andre Reed, another former Bill who was good in the early 90s when the Bills went on their Super Bowl runs, and is probably a potential Hall of Famer. But guess what? He's at the back end of his career. They also signed a guy by the name of Deion Sanders, all right, who just came off 5 years of playing with the Cowboys. And they had 2 of the top 3 picks in the NFL draft. They drafted LeVar Arrington, who, if he didn't get hurt, would have went on to be a really good linebacker. In his early days, he was really good. And Chris Samuels, who was a 6-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro, was a 10-year Redskin. And when he retired, He was Trent Williams before Trent Williams because they drafted Trent Williams the year after he retired. So that's the other thing. Side note, think about that. For 20 years, the Redskins had a stud All-Pro left tackle in their organization, and they still couldn't win. But my point is that Redskin team started out 6-2. And everybody was picking them to go to the Super Bowl, and they just weren't a team, though. They couldn't gel, and you had an idiot owner who was meddling and telling Norv Turner, who was the coach, to who to play and who to start and whatnot. So they lose the next couple of games. They're 7-6. They lose a really heartbreaking loss to the Giants. They're 7-6. Still in playoff contention, and Snyder fires Norv Turner. Does this sound familiar a little bit?
Yeah.
And they end up going 8-8, missing the playoffs. I don't even think the Jets can win 8 games. But my point is, when you try to throw a roster together and not develop a roster, it's never going to win. Even the Rams, your Rams, when they won the Super Bowl, they had a lot of homegrown talent on that team. They just brought in a couple pieces to make that better. And they were in a Super Bowl just a couple years before that. It's not like they were terrible. And then they just, they added some pieces. And Stafford being one of those, but Stafford wasn't 40 years old.
Yeah, we had brought in Stafford and Von Miller, and we already had Ramsey on for a couple of years. So I agree. I mean, I think they're a team of mercenaries. They're a team of a lot of players on that team are very talented or were very talented, but they just don't match. They don't gel. And once again, at the Jets, you have a meddlesome owner who is not helping and fired, in my opinion, and I feel like in most opinions, the best coach on your coaching staff you fire. And I think in the last, they haven't put up 20 points in the last 2 or 3 games. So
they're the only team in the NFL that hasn't scored 25 points.
Yeah. So, I mean,
and this is the thing. I'm looking at Aaron Rodgers' numbers: 30th in completion percentage, 25th in average yards per pass, 18th in touchdown to interception ratio, and 22nd in passer rating. And this is the thing. Aaron Rodgers averaged 7 interceptions a year in Green Bay. Some years where he only had, 2 or 3.
I think one of his MVP years, you have 4.
Average 7. He's already thrown 7 this year. So what does that tell me? He's not as mobile as he used to be. He doesn't trust his receivers. Devontae probably helps with that. But at the end of the day, they're cooked. And he's not a leader. That's the other thing. He's never been a good leader. He's not a leader, but he's always had talent around him, and he's always been, talented enough to overcome some of that. Not anymore.
With that being said, and talking about the AFC East in general, I mean, you may as well just book your Bills playoff tickets if you want to go to the Bills game.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills are going to win that division. Tua getting hurt obviously helped the Bills because they're a completely different team when they don't have Tua, as we found out. It floors me that they didn't go out and try to sign a veteran backup in case Tua gets hurt. I mean, it's just why not try to go out and get a Flacco or get somebody, Jameis or somebody that can even Jacoby Brissett would be better than what they have. Somebody can get them through, maybe win a game or two and get them through until you get Tua back.
I mean, look what Green Bay is doing with Malik Willis.
Yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't consider Willis like a veteran backup. Like, I mean, that was a guy they took a shot on, and obviously he's doing well.
No, but I'm just saying, like, look what you can do with a backup. Like, if you if you get a backup and you have good coaching which I mean, LaFleur is a great coach. You know, if you have good coaching, you can win a couple games with a backup while your quarterback's down. Now, I think LaFleur is a top 5, top 10 coach in the league right now. So like that helps, but you can definitely win in the league with a backup. It's tougher, but
I agree, and I think the Bills, they have their faults, and I still worry about the back end of that defense. But yeah, they're if unless Josh Allen gets hurt, there's no reason that they're not winning another AFC East title. But when it comes to the AFC East, I can tell you this: I would much rather be in the position that my Patriots are in, having a young, up and coming quarterback, and trying to build talent around him, and they're going to have a ton of cap space next year to be able to try to go out and bring talent in. Then the Jets, who are just going to have to blow that whole thing up and start over. And the problem is they just miss out on quarterback talent in the drafts year after year. They've drafted high before, and it is kind of a lottery. And but the problem is they're never going to. They're just the Jets, the same old Jets.
Yeah.
Now, go back to Thursday night. Let's talk about your team, the playoff contending Rams. That was a hell of a game they played, even if they did kind of, get away with a pretty big call at the end of that game.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, the call was a missed call. It was blatantly missed, and the referee team, I don't remember his name, but the leader of the refereeing team that week or that game said that it was a missed call, and they said like they couldn't see it because the way Sam Darnold was positioned, like the way that he was coming down, that back judge couldn't see it, that back ref couldn't see it very well. And so like, yes, it was a big call or a big missed call, but our defense was playing really good. We were up 8 points, so they had to drive down the field. So if they get that penalty, they get 15 yards. They're about at the 20-yard line. They have to drive 80 yards on a defense who's playing hot, and then get the touchdown and the 2-point conversion, and that's just to go to overtime. So, I agree that it was a missed call, and it could have. There is always a chance, and every week there's a chance. Every look at the Commanders game, but
yeah, you never know.
But I do think we would have won that game even if they got the call.
So, I've seen a lot of pundits this week. A healthy Rams team is obviously dangerous. They've got a really, young, tough, fast defense. And if you can keep Puka and Kupp healthy, then that's a team that you're not going to want to play down the stretch.
Yeah.
And, now the word on the street is Christian McCaffrey's coming back week 10 after the bye this week. Now, we heard that he was, good for week 1 and there was a setback. So, barring no setbacks. And I feel like Purdy is a completely different player when you have Christian McCaffrey in the game, as any other quarterback probably would be. That's going to be a battle all the way down the stretch. And the Rams have a win over the 49ers, which helps you. Now, you have to go to San Francisco still, though, right? Then you beat them in LA?
Yeah, we beat them in LA.
So you still have to go to San Francisco. But, yeah, I think that's going to come down the stretch. And at the end of the day, I think whoever wins that division is probably going to get the 4th seed. It's going to be a battle. It's probably going to be like a 10-7.
They could get the 3 seed over the South team, over the Falcons.
I don't know. Falcons are playing really tough right now.
Yeah, it just depends on how they play. I could see them getting. Honestly, in my opinion, a healthy Rams team is the most dangerous situation if you're a Detroit fan. Detroit is by far the best team in the NFC.
I agree.
We played them tough last year. We took it to overtime last year in the playoff game, and we took them to overtime this year in the in week one. We're the only team that's played them that close, in my opinion. Obviously, San Francisco beat them last year, but that was with a fully healthy team.
Well, Tampa beat them this year, but that was a different Tampa team.
Yeah.
No,
I agree. I mean, without Godwin, without Evans, it's a tough loss. But our defense is young, and it's only getting better. I was really afraid going into the season with White as one of our corners, but we've removed that situation. Now we have some young corners. We brought back Witherspoon, who I think is a stud. And then our biggest weakness on defense right now is our middle linebackers. But I like we just signed Tony Fields the second. He played on the Browns, but the Browns are obviously loaded on defense, so I think he could be very good in the defense. And then and what I was just going to say is our offensive line can be, if it gets healthy again, it can be top 5. And if we can keep our 4 main players, in my opinion, the 4 main players on this team, not anybody on the defense, it is in order, in my opinion, Stafford, Puka, Kyren Williams, Cooper Kupp. If those 4 players can stay healthy, we can play against anybody, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, if you can keep those 4 people healthy, I mean, look at the difference that it made in just Thursday night. And the biggest thing that win did for you guys is you may have been taking calls about Cooper Kupp, but I don't think you're answering them anymore. I think you're looking at it going, hey, we can make a run here. And I do think that you could potentially, especially if you're like a 4th seed, because you're playing, the 5th seed. So, if you're the 4th seed, you could potentially win a game, in the playoffs, and go to the second round.
Yeah, I mean, Kyren Williams is playing lights out. 10 straight touchdowns. 10 straight games with a touchdown going back to last year. He's a stud. In my opinion, he's probably the 3rd best running back in the league, or the 4th best running back in the league behind Derrick Henry, McCaffrey, and Saquon. So you've got that going for you. Stafford's obviously, he was slinging it on Thursday, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. You're going to get those interceptions with Stafford. He is a gunslinger. But I think with McVay and in a good, healthy offense and a young, spry, ready to attack defense. And I was watching the mic'd up video of the game, which was Jared Verse, who we'll talk about later, but he was the mic'd up player on Thursday, and he just chirps and chirps, and he gets in the opponent's head.
He flies around, he's jumping off the film. I can tell you that. All right.
So a team that obviously we know a player on one of these teams pretty well. I went to high school with him. The Bears versus the Commanders. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the ending? Do you think the Commanders and the Bears are, especially the Bears, do you think they're still playoff contenders?
Yes, I think the Bears are still playoff contenders, mainly because of their defense. Their defense is legit, but at the end, even if Stevenson is a moron at the end of that game,
yeah.
But this is the one thing I will say about that game: ball don't lie. And the Commanders thoroughly dominated that game. 3.5 quarters of that game. Caleb was like 4 for 13 for like 60 yards or something. Yeah, for like, going into the 4th quarter. They Jane Daniels absolutely outplayed Caleb, even with having a rib injury. The Bears defense is legit. But I think a lot of that comes down, what the Bears problem is, it comes down to offensive coaching. And yeah, they are a tipped Hail Mary away from being 5-2, being right there with the Vikings, right there, knocking on the door, a half a game behind the Packers. But at the end of the day, ball don't lie. And, that's probably, I would say that's the most exciting play and Commanders that the Commanders have seen since RG3's run versus the Vikings back in 2012.
I'd agree with that.
That is that was, I mean, it was an amazing play, but I mean, watching that whole game, they just dominated the Bears. They couldn't score a touchdown because the Bears defense is legit. The Bears offense has stars all over it. Think about this. Commanders have one elite wide receiver and Terry McLaurin.
Yeah.
They have arguably a top 10 running back in Brian Robinson. And kind of over the hill tight end and Zach Ertz, and then a bunch of no names.
Yeah.
And so to me, it comes down to coaching. Dan Quinn has that team feeling good, motivated. And well, this is the thing. In football, the number one thing in football is, having confidence. If you have confidence, then you're looking around going, okay, I'm ready to make the next play, not waiting for somebody else to make the next play. So having Jane Daniels, having that confidence of knowing like, hey, you never know what this kid can do. Here's a question I have for you. Is Daniels the biggest star in DC right now? Sports star.
Probably because
bigger than Ovechkin.
Probably because hockey is not as popular as football.
I'm just talking about in the city, not nationally. In the city,
I'd probably say still that I don't know. There are probably more people that own an Ovechkin jersey than a Jaden Daniels jersey. If that means
well, Ovechkin's been around for almost 20 years, and
exactly. So,
by the way, he had 2 goals last night.
Yeah, and the Caps are playing really good right now.
They're playing out their minds right now.
Yeah, they're a top, 10, 12 team in the NHL.
That was a big win against the Rangers last night. I watched I watched the third quarter of that, and it was. I
watched the highlights. It was a very
big win.
Yeah. So the Caps playing really well, and the Commanders playing really well. It would be hard, but I'd say Daniels is probably bigger in DC right now.
I don't think he is yet, and I say yet.
Yeah.
Now, if he takes them to a playoff, goes to the playoffs and does what CJ Stroud did and wins a playoff game, and obviously the national media is, he's a darling right now and everything else. In DC, because I think you've lost so many fans, there's a lot of people that, just gave up. They didn't pick another team, but they just gave up watching football. I know a lot of those people. They were just like, I'm just not watching football anymore because my team's, was the Redskins or Washington football team or whatever, and I'm just done.
By Dan Snyder.
Well, that's a lot of that. A lot of losing and just stupidity and whatnot. So I don't think that he's bigger than Ovechkin in the city yet, but I think he's well on his way.
Yeah. Which is not saying that's not saying that Ovechkin's not going to be, loved in DC till the day he retires and well after.
Oh, yeah.
Ovechkin's by far my favorite hockey player and is one of my favorite sports players of all time. as a Caps fan since the day I was born.
The grade 8.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's the best goal scorer of all time. He's going to go down as that, in my opinion. He's only less than 40 goals away now. But with that being said, I think football is bigger, and I think the Commanders are going to be a bigger team than the Capitals.
Well, what's going to happen is, obviously, if the Commanders keep winning, playoffs, that sort of thing, that's going to be big. But then the season's going to end. Ovechkin is going to go late into the season. If he's close to breaking that record at the end of the year, which he's gonna have to have a great year to do that. Basically a 40-goal season.
Yeah, at the beginning of the season, he was 41 goals away, I believe.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So 41 goal season. That's gonna, for his age. Now, if they keep playing this well, who knows? But the thing is, if he doesn't get it, then obviously beginning of next year, that's all people are going to be talking about.
Oh yeah, those tickets are going to be expensive.
Oh, crazy. But anyway, because there's nobody in the Nationals, anymore. If Juan Soto was still there, I would say he would be right up there. But obviously, he's gone. And I think when the Nationals were, dominant, 2016, 17, 18, 19, there's years they had Max Scherzer and Strasburg and then Soto emerged. And, at one time I would say Bryce Harper was the most, the famous, best, most recognizable player in the DC area.
Was hated.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny because I was watching the World Series. And I'm not rooting for the Yankees by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not rooting against Soto. Yeah. I love the kid so much. Helped us win a World Series when he was 20 years old. But I can tell you, when I watch the Phillies, I cannot stand Bryce Harper, and I love that they keep losing. And I know they have Turner on their team too, but yeah. Getting back to the Commanders, though, I was thinking about this. So. Talk about Dan Quinn and turning that culture around and Josh Harris and turning that culture around. Do you realize that Ron Rivera was the head coach of that team for 5 years? For 5 years, not one of his first-round picks is on the active roster right now.
That's crazy.
And they are 6-2 and leading the NFC East. 2020. Number 2 overall pick, Chase Young. Okay. Traded for a 4th-round pick last year. 2021, the 19th pick overall, linebacker out of Kentucky, Jamin Davis. He was cut in the preseason, and right now he's on the Packers practice squad. 2022, 16th overall, Jawan Davis. Right? No. Dotson. Jawan Dotson, wide receiver, traded to the Eagles in the preseason. So you traded him in division to your rival in the preseason. All right, for I think like a 3rd or 4th-round pick. And then last year, 2023, they had the 16th overall pick, drafted the corner Forbes, who had a very disappointing rookie season and then got hurt in the first game with a thumb injury. He's on the IR. So that's 5 first-round picks, 4 that are no longer on the roster at all, 1 that's on the IR, not on the active roster, that were Ron Rivera's draft picks, with 4 of them being defensive players. Okay. So that to me, he started in 2019, and you had Haskins and Sweat. Also,
Haskins Sweat's on the Bears now.
They traded Haskins last year, and then they traded Sweat last year, and then Haskins they had cut, and obviously had passed away. I think he was on Pittsburgh's roster, but he got hit by a car or truck or whatever in Florida walking along the highway. It's still a weird story. But anyway, my point is, Rivera, I think Rivera was a stable force to get them through the transition, away from Gruden into, through all the Washington football team stuff and Snyder basically getting fined and having to sell the team and everything else. So
he wasn't controversial.
Yeah, he just wasn't a good evaluator of talent. And now I think they have a lot of that going for them now. Having Peters, who they got from San Francisco, and Kingsbury, Dan Quinn's got that defense humming. So yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, I think they're definitely a team on the rise.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the Commanders. I predicted the Commanders to win the division at the beginning of the year. It'll either be the Commanders or the Eagles, and if Jaden keeps playing like this, watch out.
Yeah, I didn't predict them to win, but I did predict to win the division. But I did predict them to come ahead of the Cowboys.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about the Lions earlier. They keep rolling. They put a 50 burger on the Titans. I think they're the best team in football right now. In my power rankings, I have them over the Chiefs. But they do play in the best division in the NFL right now, in the NFC North. Are the Lions, do you see them keeping it up?
Yeah, I do. I think good defense and a good run game are sustainable in this league. And they have a good defense, and they can run the ball with the best of them. They have two of the best. They have in my opinion, the best running back duo in the. I think Tampa Bay's is really good too. I think Tampa Bay's is really good, but I mean, Montgomery and Gibbs. I mean, Gibbs is so quick.
I was about to say, he is so fast.
And I mean, and the Detroit Lions can thank the Rams for that, because that was one of the picks we gave them. They picked Gibbs.
But you got a Super Bowl.
Yeah, we got a Super Bowl, and we have Kyren Williams, so I'm not worried about it. But yeah, I agree. They're in the toughest division. They have kind of leading us into what's next. They have they have a tough game next week, or this week, I guess, if Jordan Love plays. If he doesn't play, then it's a much easier game. But if he does play, that's a tough game. Packers are on a 4-game winning streak.
It sounds like he's efforting. Sounds like he's going to try to do everything he can to play. But even if he can't go the whole game, I mean, I'm not saying Malik Willis is Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, even though his interceptions are out a little bit higher than I think he would like. It's not that far of a fall off. And it's funny, I think Malik Willis has just got him a big contract next year somewhere. But I don't think he's going to be the backup in Green Bay anymore. Maybe he says, hey, I'll stay. Give me $10, $15 million a year, and I'll stay right here and be the backup. But I just feel like he's heading somewhere next year. I
think or to Raiders or to the Jets. But I think that I think Lions, if they stay healthy, if everybody stays healthy, of course, that's how most predictions are. If they stay healthy, they're going to get the bye. I mean, they're the best team in the NFC for sure. I think the Rams play them tough, but they beat us twice in a row now. So, they're the best team in the NFC right now, and either one or two, just depending on how much you trust Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. So, I have them as number 2, and second best team in the league. I have the Chiefs number 1. Hard hard to argue against 7-0, or 8-0, whatever they are. So
7-0.
7-0, yeah. They've already had their bye.
Oh, I can argue against it. We're about to.
But yeah, it's a sustained run game, a quarterback who doesn't make very many mistakes, and a very, very good offensive line, a good perimeter weapons, good defense, above average defense. I still am slightly worried about their back end, but other than that, they look scary.
Yeah, the Lions, the only team that can beat the Lions right now is themselves, either by injury or just Dan Campbell doing something dumb, to blow a game for them. I think and hope that he learned his lesson from last year in the NFC Championship game. But you never know. He's very aggressive, and as a coach, he is. He's the kind that you want on your side.
He's a motivator.
Oh yeah. And that's good when you're winning. If you're losing, nobody wants to hear that anymore. Yeah. But yeah, I think the only thing they can beat the Lions is themselves. So speaking of the Chiefs, they keep winning ugly. And I was watching that Chiefs Raiders game. That's a bad Raiders team, and they just let them hang around and hang around and hang around. They weren't out of that game, even in the fourth quarter. Mahomes he's not a top 10 quarterback right now in the league. Mahomes is Mahomes. And, he's the best quarterback in the league, but statistically right now, he is not a top 10 quarterback. So, now you did get Kelsey involved, which, was a surprise, pleasant surprise to a lot of Chiefs fans and a lot of Kelsey fantasy football fans. But at the end of the day, I can see them getting tripped up several times down the stretch.
I think that I agree. Statistically, Patrick Mahomes is not a top 10 quarterback in the league right now, but he's the best quarterback. I trust him more than almost anybody in the league when it comes to just that crucial play or that crucial couple plays or that crucial drive that you need at the end of the game, or maybe even the middle of the game. Maybe you need a crucial play. You never know when it's going to happen. But I trust him more than anybody else in the league to get that done. I trust Andy Reid. He's the best coach in the league right now. Probably going to go down as one of the best coaches of all time. Their defense is stellar, in my opinion. And they just got D-Hop. That was for D-Hop's first game. So we got to see how that develops and how they can kind of get him situated. And then they should get Hollywood Brown back in December. So, if they go on a playoff run, which, of course, they're the Chiefs, they're probably going to. They're probably going to get Hollywood Brown back. And he's going to help a lot there. And he's going to obviously be not played a single game. So he's going to be refreshed and not tired. And then you get playoff
Pacheco
eventually.
Pacheco's coming back towards the end of the year.
Yeah, and Pacheco's coming back. So, and then you still have Kareem Hunt, who's a great, running back that will sit behind him and, do some of the help him with some of the load.
Don't get me wrong. I'm looking at the Chiefs schedule right here. They got the Buccaneers after their bye. Or no, they got the Buccaneers on Monday night. Okay. At home. So they should win that game. Then they have a really gritty, tough Broncos team at home the week after. So, they should win that game. Bo Nix being a rookie going up against a really tough defense, they should win that game. So, that's 2 more wins. But then they go to the Bills on a Sunday afternoon, 4:30 game. That's going to be that's going to be probably their biggest test they've had all year, in my opinion, other than maybe the Ravens week 1. Because the 49ers, I think, were very banged up when they played them. If they played the 49ers.
Bengals, that was a tough game, too.
That was a tough game. I agree. But I'm saying the Bills are a legit top 5 team in the league. And that game could mean a lot because, depending on how the season shakes out, that could be for first place in the AFC. Or it could mean, that could be a tiebreaker down the stretch. After that, at the Panthers, they should win that game. The Raiders at home after that, which we already, talked about. Then the Chargers at home on a Sunday night. And hopefully the Chargers are a little more healthy by that point. Then at the Browns, which you never know on that, what the Browns are going to be looking like at that point. Texans, which by that point, hopefully Nico's back. They lost Diggs, tore his ACL. He's out for the season. But, so that's another losable game at the Steelers. Not sure what that,
I mean, I think they're going to go 15 to 16 15-2 or 14-3, somewhere in that area.
I think 14-3 is probably, because it's the thing. Even if, let's say you lose to the Bills, you lose to the Texans or the Steelers, you're probably got, you might lose one other one, like a fluky game like they did the Raiders last year.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Raiders, Broncos, the Chargers.
So, it's one of those things like they're the Chiefs. They're going to get, just like the Patriots used to, you're going to get everybody's best game. Everybody's coming for you every week.
Yeah.
So you better be ready to go. You better be hyped.
They've done that for 7 weeks in a row, and they've won 7 games. So
I know.
I agree. They're ugly wins. They're gritty. They're not playing the best. But that's what's scary. That's, in my opinion, that's what's scary. They're not playing the best right now, and they're 7-0.
If you wanted to get the Chiefs, last year was the year to get the Chiefs.
I mean, even this year they have a lot of injuries, but that's they have a lot of injuries. They've lost their first, their wide receiver 1 in Rashee Rice. They lost their wide receiver 2 in Hollywood Brown before the season even started. They lost their running back 1 in Pacheco. Kelsey's not playing the best. Patrick Mahomes is not playing the best. And they're still the only undefeated team. That's what's the scariest to me, is they can be playing bad and still be playing good.
Yeah, I mean, now their strength of schedule, their opponents so far this season have an average or at a 455 win percentage. So it's not like they've played the toughest schedule so far, this season. Now compare that to, let's look at, well, the Lions, are strength of schedule is 462. So, they're a little bit better. It's kind of like your fantasy team when you score the most points, but you're towards the bottom because you're always playing, the toughest opponent. But then the guy at the top,
that's like the lowest point scored and the lowest points.
Not the lowest, but you're sitting there like way ahead of that person, and then but you look at their points against, and it's like, oh yeah, no wonder.
Yeah,
I'm getting my ass kicked every week, and they're getting cakewalks. So
I mean, I think that Bills game is gonna be like a deciding factor.
Oh,
but I mean, the Bills beat them last year in season, and then they lost in the playoffs. So
yeah, no, it's gonna be a must watch.
I agree.
That's
a
must watch
game, or it should.
It's a 4:30 game.
Oh wow, I'm surprised it's not prime time.
I'm sure CBS. So you can protect games. So when you're so far out, you can be like, oh, we're not protecting that game. We're not letting NBC steal it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
we were talking about veteran quarterbacks earlier in the podcast. People signing some veteran quarterbacks. The Colts did over the offseason. They signed Joe Flacco. Starting, they've decided to bench Anthony Richardson. How do you feel about that? How do you think that's the right thing to do?
I think it's so. This is the thing. The way I look at it is, I think Irsay's looking around, going, he sees C.J. Stroud last year, having a great season. Obviously, Young is not, hasn't had a great career so far. We got C.J. Stroud, but this year you've got Williams and Daniels and Bo Nix and even a little bit of Drake May are all looking really good. And you've got Anthony Richardson, who only played, 11 or 12 games in college, and comes into the league. The kid needs to develop. He should have never began the season last year as a starter. He should have, sat behind Minshew, at least to start the season, learn. They bring him in. Obviously, after 3 or 4 games, he gets hurt. So, hopefully he did sit around learning. Everybody in that building apparently loves him. They love the kid.
Yeah.
They think he's doing great. He says a lot of right things. But the problem is, if you're a team that's competitive and you have a chance to win, there's 52 other guys on that team. And, what are you going to tell Pittman and Dowds and Taylor? Like, oh, we're kind of going to waste this season because we're trying to develop, Anthony Richardson, and, screw your stats and everything else. Like, that doesn't really work. That's how you lose a locker room. So I think they had to make the decision. And I tell you, him tapping out, I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, him being tired.
Yeah, and then saying he was tired, like that. You can't do that, because those offensive linemen, they don't tap out. They're grinding on every play. Those receivers are running down the field, even when the ball is, they know it's not coming to them. They're out there, running up and down. Like, you can't do that. Like, and he's 22. He's a 22-year-old kid. Like, he's going to learn. Unfortunately, that's going to follow him. That's going to be something that comes up the rest of his career.
Well, and I'm all for telling the truth, especially at the podium, saying the truth. But in that scenario, that's one moment where you should have just said, "Oh, I got a cramp,"
Well, no, he should have just went down on the ground with a cramp.
Yeah.
Or something.
So, I agree. I mean, that's tough, but I do think Joe Flacco, in all honesty, I don't think I would say that I would have said this, a couple years ago, but I think Joe Flacco makes that team better.
He gives them the best chance to win. Right now, they're 4-4. They are they're a half a game out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Halfway through the season. They're a half a game behind the Chargers, who are 4-3. So you have to give, if you want a chance to win, and at the end of the day, he's 22. He's got time to grow. I forget who said it, but there was a quarterback who said, basically, it takes 3 to 6 seasons to really start understanding the game and understanding, to be a good NFL quarterback. And, I saw him in Florida when he was in Florida, and he jumped off the film. I was like, this kid is an athlete. He's, can run, he can throw. I remember telling your brother, I was like, man, this kid is good. And I knew he was going to go early. But I knew he needed developing. Like, you just can't, bring him in. I mean, he would have been great to go like the Jordan Love path, like to go to a veteran, team with a veteran quarterback, like the Rams or something, and sit behind the Stafford for a couple of years. and learn the position before you bring him in.
No, I agree.
I
think he's in that draft class. When it comes to just raw talent and athletic ability, I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in that draft class.
Yeah.
But like you said, he makes a lot of dumb mistakes. He throws a lot of interceptions. From just I think it's just not being able to read the defenses properly. Maybe the NFL's too fast paced right now. He just needs to take a step back and try to adjust more.
Yeah, I saw a statistic. It was like since 2000, there's like 250 quarterbacks with at least 200 dropbacks or something like that. It's 225 quarterbacks with at least 250 dropbacks in the NFL since 2000. And his completion percentage was third from the bottom.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you gotta, you can't lose. Like I said, you're a half game out of the playoffs. You cannot lose that locker room. You can't, tell these guys now, if he's playing marginally well,
yeah,
then I think, you can, even with the tap out, you can sort of, tell hey, we're developing him, he's coming along and whatever else. But I think you can't. I mean, you barely beat a Miami team with Snoop Huntley quarterback, and Flacco's won what two of your games. So
I mean, they were in it against the Texans, and I honestly think if Flacco was playing that game, I think they would have won.
Yeah, I picked them to win. I picked the Colts to upset the Texans just because I knew the Texans were banged up, and they should have won that game. They absolutely should have won that game. All right, let's talk a little trade. So, Deontay Johnson was traded from the Panthers to the Ravens yesterday. I don't know how much that helps the Ravens. I mean, it will help them depth-wise, but I think he's on a good team. He's a third receiver. They need more help on the back end. I feel like they need a corner. The Ravens do. Then I saw where the Vikings had traded for Cam Robinson from the Jaguars, which basically tells me the Jaguars they're kind of in tank mode now. 2-6, out of the playoffs picture. Even though I think it was the 2022 Jaguars did go from 2-6 to making the playoffs. Saw that the other day because they were talking about the Jets. But I don't think this Jaguars team or the Jets team is going to be doing that.
I agree.
So any other, basically next Tuesday is the trade deadline. I don't think your Rams are making any. They're not selling.
No, they could be buying.
They could be a buyer. My Patriots, they traded Uche.
I saw that.
To the Chiefs for a 6th-round pick in 2026, which I was like, we probably could have gotten a little bit better, but okay. Obviously my Patriots on a rebuild, and it's a whole other story. They could get rid of a receiver too.
One player I think that could be traded. We could see. I haven't heard very many rumors about it or anything, but this is kind of just what I think, just based off the team. I think Marshawn Lattimore could be traded. Saints, they're not playing very well. Their season's kind of done for the most part. I think they could trade him and get some good capital. I think he's a hell of a good player, hell of a good cornerback. I think some teams would definitely want him. And in all honesty, if the Cowboys lose the next game or two before the deadline, I think they could blow up and trade some of their players too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The problem is you got 1 week until the trade deadline. It's Tuesday. So if the Cowboys lose to the Falcons.
Yeah.
Now they're what 3-5. I mean, they're 13th in the NFC right now.
Yeah.
But they're only one win
Back from
behind the Bears. I mean, the Bears are 4-3, and no, the Eagles are 5-2. They have the last playoff spot, so they're 2 games behind the Eagles. I don't see them. I don't see them making a lot of trades.
I mean, I think that I don't know if they will, just solely because Jerry Jones likes to keep players.
It's an ego thing too.
Yeah. So I don't think he could, but I mean, I could see it. I could see it happening where they trade a couple pieces away to try and get some draft picks, try and reload. So
what about? Let me ask you this: what about this? Is just crazy talk now. What if somebody says, "Hey, Jets, will you trade us Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams?"
I don't know if any team's going to want him.
I don't know who, but I'm just trying to think. Like, I mean, if somebody gets hurt this weekend,
I think if you're the Jets, you take them. You get a second and a third for both of them. You take that in a heartbeat. I don't even know if they're worth a second and a third. I don't even know what team would want to get them.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Devontae Adams.
Rodgers, really. Yeah, Adams I could see Adams getting traded again.
Like the Bucks,
Yeah.
Or
Chargers.
Chargers. Even though Adams trashes the Chargers all the time. Maybe the Bills, even though Keon Coleman is playing like a man. Like that kid is playing. That's why I was so mad.
He's playing like a 4 or 5 year rookie. Or a 4
I was so mad when the Patriots didn't draft him. Got jumped by the Bills to draft him because I knew that kid was going to be a good player in the NFL. Yeah, I mean the Ravens obviously just traded for Johnson. I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. I think the Jets are just going to ride it out and
blow it up at the end of the season.
Yeah, blow it all up. Crosby's not getting traded. Allen already came out and said that, not trading him. He's a key cornerstone piece of that organization. I mean,
not how many trades left.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple trades for some backups or some players, but
I mean, this is the thing. What you mostly see in the trade deadline is like offensive line, but you see edge rushers and you see wide receivers. That's what gets traded the most. Mainly because they don't have to really learn a ton on the playbook. Edge rusher, you just
set them loose.
Yeah. And a wide receiver, they just have to kind of learn some of the lingo and that sort of thing. So, all right. So we just finished week 8, which is sort of the unofficial halfway point of the season. It used to be the halfway point when there were 16 games. But with, now the last week of the season sometimes means a lot, sometimes means absolutely nothing to people. But we're going to do our halfway season, halfway through the season awards. So we're going to do a offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year, coach of the year, MVP, and maybe some bold predictions. So who do you have, Matthew, for your offensive rookie of the year?
I
think this one's pretty easy.
Yeah, I think it's either Daniels or
so your top 3.
I mean Daniels, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix. Daniels one. You could, if Keon Coleman keeps playing this well, you could put him at 3. but Bo Nix is also playing really well. So hard to say. But I would say Daniels is right now halfway. Daniels is a for sure number one in Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, and could be in the conversation for MVP.
Yeah, I mean, right now, so I have Bo Nix number 3. Broncos are 5-3 right now. They're in the playoffs. Caleb Williams number 2. You know, Bears are 4-3. They were Hail Mary away from being 5-2. You know, they're right now they're 1 game out of the playoffs. And then obviously Jaden Daniels, number 1. I mean, by far right now, Offensive Rookie of the Year. I mean, he's broke some NFL stats, not just rookie stats. So yeah, I think by far he is Offensive Rookie of the Year. All right, Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Number 1, I feel like number 1 is also I think we might agree both on it. Jared Verse, not only as a Rams fan, but I think he is playing the best. I think he has the best odds to win it right now in the betting market. I saw the other week he has the most pressures of any rookie, and I think if I remember correctly, this was week 7, so I'm not sure with the updated stats. He had the highest pressure rate on a quarterback for his snap. So obviously he's not playing every snap. He's playing way more than he was at the beginning. So you could see that go down. But as of week 7, he had the highest pressure rate out of any player in the league. I mean, think about that. He was beating Aiden Hutchinson and Chris Jones and Max Crosby. Every defensive player in the league, he had the highest pressure rate. He's getting more sacks now, so I think he's clear-cut number 1 in my opinion. And number 2 is the Colts player Latu. He's playing really well. And if I'd say number 3, if I couldn't be Brandon Fisk, who I think is also playing really well on the Rams, you don't want a second Rams player. I'd probably say Mitchell. Keon Mitchell, I believe his name was. Keon Mitchell for the Eagles. He's a cornerback for the Eagles. And he's playing. He's really helped their back end.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much in right there the same. I got Keon Mitchell, number 3. Latu, who I felt like maybe the best defensive players coming out into the draft, him and Turner. But yeah, Jared Verse has definitely stepped up, is dominated. Like I said, jumping off the film. And so I would definitely make him, right as of right now, he's my Defensive Rookie of the Year. All right.
I mean, not one player is going to replace Aaron Donald, but he's doing a good job trying to.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. That's like saying, Drake May is going to replace Tom Brady. It's like, let's just replace Mac Jones for right now.
Oh, I agree.
All right, Coach of the Year. So I'll go first. So at number 3, I have Sean Payton with the Broncos. I mean, I think a lot of people didn't expect them to be competitive with, having a rookie quarterback, and not just a rookie quarterback, the 5th rookie quarterback taken in the draft in Bo Nix. But that defense is playing really well. He's got that offense, coming together. Bo Nix is could be a little miniature Drew Brees right now. And, if they continue to play tough, 5-3, and I think, they have the legitimate shot at making the playoffs. Number 2 is Kevin O'Connell with the Vikings. I know they've lost their last 2, but I will tell you, starting out 5-0, I picked the Vikings coming dead last. Obviously we didn't know Sam Darnold was going to have the season that he's having. But I think, what he's done with that team has got them playing, really well. That's it's in the toughest division in the league. But yeah, I think I'm applauding Kevin O'Connell right now. But number one is Dan Quinn, in my opinion. He's got this Commanders team rolling. They're 6-2. This is a team that last year went 4-13. They had the worst defense in the league. Sam Howell, their quarterback, threw the most interceptions of anybody in the league. Obviously, they shipped him off, and they have, Jaden Daniel. But I think it's, I got to applaud him. And if they win that division, no matter what happens in the playoffs, obviously, because you vote before the end of the playoffs, they win that division. I don't see how you can't give him the award.
No, I agree. We have the same number one and the same number three. So Sean Payton, number three. I agree. He's definitely coaching very well. Bo Nix is playing very well. Kevin O'Connell's in my honorable mention. He's probably number 4 off my list. But number 2 for me is Raheem Morris, the coach for Atlanta. I think Atlanta's playing really well, and once again, they could win that division. In my opinion, they could win a playoff game.
Yeah, but I think Atlanta was picked to win that division. I mean, obviously Tampa won it last year, but I think getting Kirk Cousins and the talent they had, they should be where they are.
No, I agree, but they're still playing well. They're still playing well, and they didn't make the playoffs last year. They're probably going to make the playoffs this year. He's a defensive coach, but he's got a very offensive mind.
Well, he's coached both. He coached
exactly.
receivers.
Yeah. And he coached under Sean McVay. So, he definitely knows the offense and their defense.
He also coached under Shanahan. He was on that 2013 coaching staff, Redskins coaching staff.
So I think he's really good. And then number 1, Dan Quinn's got to be number 1. That team is just rallied around him, rallied around his culture that he's built with Harris, and I think that if they win that division and make the playoffs, he is most likely going to get the award.
Yeah, and it's I mean, good, like I said, good for them, good for the city, and good for the Commanders. I mean, could you give it to a Andy Reid or something like that? They're 7-0, but they're the 2-time defending champion.
Yeah, they're expected to be good.
Yeah. All right. Defensive Player of the Year. Who you got?
Right now, Defensive Player of the Year. I really don't. I mean, you're always going to have, like the Myles Garrett in the conversation. And I think he's played okay. He's definitely not had his best season.
He's not even on my list for top 3.
Yeah, so really, in all honesty, my number 1 is who I think should have won it last year and the year before, and I think he should win it this year. And that's TJ Watt. So I think he's playing. I mean, last game, the Monday night game, he won that game for him. He had the strip sack fumble for the recovery.
He won the Super Bowl
for them. Yeah, he's a baller. He's the best, one of the best. Now that Aaron Donald's gone, I can now say TJ Watt is the best defensive player. At least the best defensive lineman. He's the best defensive lineman.
Yeah, he's the best. Well, he's the best defensive player. I have him. I have Chris Jones, and then Max Crosby, and then
I would have had Aiden Hutchinson on there if he would have stayed healthy. But
yeah. And you could put Anderson on there from the Texans too. Yeah. Honorable mention, but I mean Chris Jones is an absolute stud. He one of the best defenses in the league. But TJ Watt is just dominating people right now, playing, in my opinion, better than I ever saw his brother play.
Yeah, I agree.
And his brother was an absolute stud.
Yeah, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, but I think TJ is playing better at a higher level than I ever saw JJ. All right, offensive player of the year. This will be interesting. Let me go first. So number 3 on my list is, and he just embarrassed his old team. That's Saquon Barkley. Um, he is playing out of his mind right now. I think the best running back in the entire league. Obviously, McCaffrey's out, so um, that's a huge pickup by the Eagles, and it could help them potentially win that division. Number 2, Justin Jefferson, best receiver in the league, playing just lights out. They try to take him away, and he's just somehow continues to get open, continues to make great catches. Um, to me, he's, like I said, best receiver in the league. But number 1's got to be Derrick Henry. The ultimate closer. The guy at 30 years old is just, running as good as I've ever seen him. Any of his years with Tennessee. So who do you got?
Once again, we have the same number 1, same number 3. Saquon Barkley at number 3. He's playing great in division pickup, which is crazy. The Giants are probably molding over that, but he's playing great. And then instead of Justin Jefferson, who I think is playing really good, and I agree is the best wide receiver in the league, I'm putting Kyren Williams there. He's
of course
touchdown
homer pick.
Touchdown every single game this year, at least one touchdown every single game this year. 80, 90, 100 plus yards every single game. And that's with a beat up offensive line and no receivers to, take away. When Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua were hurt, they were stacking the box, Kyren Williams was the only person that they were worried about. So even with that, he was still getting production, and in my opinion, is probably one of the best, if not the best, running back in the red zone. Derrick Henry is my number 1. He's the only person I think that might be better than Kyren Williams in the red zone. And yeah, you're right. He's just playing the best ball he's ever played, and I think a lot of that is helped by Lamar. Obviously, you can't stack the box like you could in Tennessee when he played in Tennessee, but he is playing the best ball he's ever played. So Derrick Henry.
All right, MVP. I'll let you go first because mine might surprise you.
Number 3, as I alluded to earlier, I think is Jayden Daniels. I have been saying this since we started this podcast. I think he could be, one of the first rookie MVPs for a long time. So, if the season ended right now, I think he would be in contention. So he is that dynamic and that much of a game changer. At number 2, I think it's Jared Goff. He's once again, he's playing lights out. He's playing probably the best he's ever played, or one of the best he's ever played. I think before this last game against the Titans, he had thrown less. He had thrown less completions.
He had more touchdowns than he had incompletions.
Incompletions, that's what it was. Yeah, he had more touchdowns than he had incompletions, and I don't know how that is after the Titans game. I didn't check that, but I think he's playing great. And then number 1. What were you going to say?
No, and your number 1?
Yeah, number 1. Originally, I was floating with Lamar, but he's won it twice now. I think they might try and go away from Lamar. Honestly, I'm glad Ethan's not here, but I think Josh Allen. He's playing really good, and what he's doing with the receivers he has before Cooper came is very impressive. And he's cleaned up his interceptions. He doesn't throw them as much anymore. He does not throw the interceptions like he used to.
Yeah, it's funny is we're exactly the same. Jayden
Really?
Daniels, Jared Goff, and Josh Allen, and for a lot of the same reasons. Like for me, Lamar is, he's putting up better numbers than he did this time, last year, but he's also got Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
So he should be putting up better numbers. And I think Derrick Henry would be stealing some MVP votes from Lamar because of how good of a year he's having. But yeah, Josh Allen is, to me, and I think some of the interception is, and I was thinking about this, he's not forcing the ball to Stephon Diggs. He's playing more free and being able to just kind of sling it without kind of almost like looking over your shoulder. Like, am I making sure I get Diggs enough touches type of thing? He's really the leader of that team. And I agree, don't get me wrong. As a Patriots fan, it kills me to say that. But yeah, Josh Allen is playing the best ball he's ever played in his career right now. Do I think they can win the Super Bowl? I don't know if they got enough
talent.
Anyway, do I think they can win the Super Bowl? I don't know if they got enough horses in the barn, especially on defense. But like we said earlier, they're going to win the division and do some. And it's a team that I wouldn't want to play in the playoffs, but I don't know if they got enough to go the distance. All right, so our top 5 for this week. Last week we did top 5 running backs of all time, which your brother was clowning you to me on your pick of Barry Sanders at number 5. But anyway, this week we're going to do top 5 most binge-worthy shows. So it'll be interesting because being older, different generations, what you have compared to what I have. You want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
I can go first. So at number 5, a relatively new show in comparison to some of the other ones I have on my list, and a show that I recently just binge watched again, is an Apple TV classic, Ted Lasso. I think it's only 3 seasons, and it leaves you at the end for now, and it leaves you at the end wanting more. At the end, you need more. And for a long time, we weren't sure if we were going to get more, and now we're pretty sure we are. So, number 5, Ted Lasso. Number 4, a show that I'm currently binge watching, and a show that I'm worried about the end, but up until now, I have been very, very happy with it, and that's Yellowstone. I love Yellowstone. I think it's a great show, and I really don't even like Westerns very much, but it's not a traditional Western.
So I thought you were caught up. So you're not caught up?
No, I am caught up.
Oh, okay. You said I thought you said you. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm watching it again. But I am.
The new season starts in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, November 11th or something like that. So I am worried about the end. But just going off of what's been out there right now, definitely a very, very, very good show. Number 3, this is kind of where we get into some older shows, some shows that I watched when I was younger. And number 3, as somebody who has a degree in chemistry, it's a show that I love, and that's Breaking Bad. It's such a good show. It's an AMC classic. Back in the day, it was Breaking Bad and The Walking Dead. And it was always like, oh, which one of these AMC shows is better? And I think the Breaking Bad's definitely way better now. I think The Walking Dead just took too long to. I think it was a lot of just filler seasons and not as good. I think the Breaking Bad was just, perfect. There's so many good episodes, so many good lines. It's quotes, characters, arcs. You have this good person. You have this good person at the beginning, it being a horrible, evil person. Well, not evil, but just somebody who's really gone down a path, to say the least.
I'll tell you. I think I told you this before. I've only watched one season, first season of Breaking Bad, and I didn't keep going mainly because um, the main character drove me nuts. I was like, "You're an idiot,"
Yeah,
and
I mean,
I and I've heard like keep watching, it gets better, and whatever else. It's just one that we haven't gone. Me and your mother haven't gone back to. We get wrapped up in other shows. I see clips all the time pop up on my my YouTube or stuff like that. But
I mean, one of the best quotes in all of TV show is "I am the one who knocks."
oh, I believe you, and it's just one that I need to get back to.
Yeah.
So all right, so that was number three.
Yeah, number two is a show that I go back and watch regularly. I'll watch it if I'm doing something. If I just need something to put on, and a show that I personally just love to watch, and that's The Office. Michael Scott, classic character. Jim Halpert, just I mean, there isn't honestly the first couple seasons. There isn't really a bad character in that show, in my opinion. All of them are good. All of them have great character development. I love Kevin Malone. He's one of my favorite characters in TV. I think it's hilarious. And I think the actor's hilarious too. So The Office is number two, something I watch regularly. Number one is a show, once again, I watch very frequently and have binge watched it quite a few times at this point. And I'm hoping to see more out of these actors, and that's Suits. I think Suits is a very good show, and I love I'm as somebody who has taken to higher education, and postgraduate education. I love kind of like smarter shows, and I think that's why I like Breaking Bad a lot. And Suits is very much like that, where you're talking a lot about law, and I've always loved law. So Suits definitely. Once a show I go back to
frequently. I started watching Suits with your mom about 6 months ago. The problem I have with Suits is I think it's a good show, and I like the actors. The seasons are so long. It's like 22, 23 episodes a season. And, it's funny because there's some TV series that are like, 6 episodes or 8 episodes. And you're like, I feel like it's a rush job. And then you get 20 some episodes, and I'm like, this takes forever. I think if you can do 12 to 14, somewhere in there, that's like a good sweet spot. Any honorable mentions? So I've got a couple honorable mentions.
As a Star Wars fan, Mandalorian, I think it's the best Star Wars show that's ever come out, except for Clone Wars.
I don't know if that's binge worthy though.
Exactly.
I haven't I'm not going to sit down and rewatch. Maybe in like 5 years or something, I'm going to sit down and rewatch it. But
no, I agree.
It's not one that I'll
yet. So,
yeah,
no, I agree. And then the other major one is Game of Thrones. But the problem with Game of Thrones is the ending was horrific. They really went off script, in my opinion. Was not good, and that is a great example of a rush job.
Well, it's a rush job. They ran out of the original material, and we could do a whole podcast just on Game of Thrones.
All right, so you're top five.
So here's my honorable mentions. I have 3 because I'm a big TV movie guy. It's a show that I really, really wish you would watch. That it frustrates me that you don't watch it, being the person that you are with sci-fi and science and everything else, and that's Rick and Morty. It is hilarious. I will fall asleep to that show. I will go like a month where I just watch it every night. I think it's gotten better as it's gone on. Number 2 honorable mention is Mad Men. Some of the best acting. You like Suits, you would love Mad Men. And it's got breakout stars in it, and it's just one of those, like, it goes through the entire decade of the 60s. So you see this evolution of these people. And my number 3 honorable mention And as I get older, it'll probably go up my list, but it is Ted Lasso. Um, I was telling somebody the other day that didn't really know the backstory of Ted Lasso. I remember seeing the commercials when
Yeah.
NBC Sports got the Premier League, and they asked Jason Sudeikis, who was on SNL at the time, to do these commercials, and he came up with this character. And if you watch the commercials, you can go to YouTube and watch them. Coach Beard is in them. This was years and years and years before they ever did Ted Lasso. And then they decided to develop Ted Lasso into a show, and there's a whole. You can go different interviews where they talk about that. Sorry. So my number 5, and this might be a little controversial, but ask anybody who watched it when it originally came out, and it started sort of the binge craze because it's a Netflix show. And as we know, Netflix drops all their things at the same time. And I love politics. And this very controversial actor now, but at the time he wasn't. But that's House of Cards. And it's one of those, like, I remember when we watched the first season, I mean, we went through that thing in probably a weekend. Like, it was that good. And I love game theory and those type of shows. Like, I love Billions. It's another one that could have probably been on one of my honorable mentions. But House of Cards is very well written, very well acted. That's my number 5. Number 4, and I got to the party a little late on this. Matthew told me for years to watch it, and then I think we finally, after like season 4 or so, we started watching it. It was a show that I'd wanted to watch for years, and I couldn't get your mom to watch it. And actually, that's where our rule came from. Of if there's a show one of us want to watch, the other one has to at least watch 2 episodes before they say, no, we're done. We don't want to watch anymore. But it's Game of Thrones. And I remember we watched 4 seasons, I think, in about 3 weeks, and caught up, and then watched the last, 3 seasons or so, 4 seasons, together as they came out. But yeah, the first 4 or 5 seasons is just phenomenal.
The first 4 seasons until they run out of book material is, in my opinion, the best show that's ever come out.
Yeah, one of the best shows ever made. And I'm not big into, like, I don't like Vikings, like, some of the medieval stuff. It's not my favorite time period. And you and I are both history guys, so it's just one of those that just doesn't. I'm not as much into, but this is more fantasy, and I'm not a big Game of Thrones, or I'm not a big Lord of the Rings guy. But yeah, Game of Thrones to me is just it's an epic, just one of those shows that you can you can put on if you've never seen it. You'll get engulfed in it very, very quickly. Number 3 is one of my favorite shows I've ever seen. And I didn't watch it until it was all done. And it's a show that you have to get through about the first season and a half. And then after that, every season gets better than the last. And that's Parks and Rec. There's so many good characters on that show. The reason I went back and watched it, and one is because, I like the writers and, so forth. But it was after Guardians of the Galaxy kind of hit, and I was like, it was like a year or 2 later, I was like, wasn't that guy in, like, a show? So, and so I went, started watching Parks and Rec, and yeah, it's just it's to me it's hilarious, and it's so fun to watch. And like I said, every season's better than the last. Number 2, and I went back and forth on my 1 and 2, but number 2, I would put The Office, and I put them barely over Parks and Rec just because I agree with you. The first probably 3 or 4 seasons is some of the funniest stuff. I mean, the first couple episodes you got to kind of throw out a little bit. Same thing with Parks and Rec. Like the first episode of Parks and Rec is terrible. Just like the first episode of Ted Lasso, I don't think is very good. But as they start getting their footing and start, kind of building on itself, The Office is, and I watched it as it came out. Once again, I'm much older. I remember watching the premiere and watching it weekly. Um, and, it's one of those shows like it was much watched TV. Um, and, it had ups and downs, uh, where Jim and Pam going to get together and all that stuff. So, all right. And my number one, and what I consider to be the greatest miniseries of all time. It was very powerful when I originally watched it, and I watch it at least once a year, and that's Band of Brothers. And once again, there's a lot of people in that movie or show that nobody had ever heard of. If you've never watched it, and even if you don't like history, you should go back and watch it. I think it's on HBO Max. It's also on Netflix, I think. But just the extraordinary sacrifice that these guys had to go through in World War II is amazing. It's about paratroopers going into D-Day, going into Market Garden. It's so powerful. And when I went to Europe and I went to Normandy, it made me appreciate that going there even more. It's from the have you ever seen Saving Private Ryan? It was developed by Band of Brothers, developed by Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg, and it's 20 years old and it's still, I think it's 25 years old and it's still one of the most powerful things you'll ever see on TV. So yeah, that's my top 5 most binge-worthy shows, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's a great top 5. I think one show that I kind of left out. Some of those shows like Band of Brothers, and obviously I think Band of Brothers is a great show, great miniseries. And I had Game of Thrones in my honorable mention. One show or two shows that I should have was thinking about including. Also were The Wire. I think The Wire is a great show, and Friends.
Yeah, Friends could, I think Friends to me is, I don't know, even though I'm old, it's still a little dated for me to even watch it today.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I can watch clips of it, like clips will pop up on like my YouTube. Same thing with Seinfeld. Like I love Seinfeld, and it's the thing. Another show that your generation probably has found that my generation watched as it came out is Lost.
Oh yeah, I watched it. I loved Lost.
I can tell you, Lost was a show that when I got to the end, I was so freaking mad and disappointed that I was like, I'm not watching any more TV for a long time, especially like hooked into a series, because you didn't have like you had to that came out long enough that I think it was even before TiVo, or it was right when TiVo was coming out. So you had to like make sure you were, but it was also one of those shows that you had to watch that the night that it came out, because you go to work the next day and people will talk about it.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's not how I was, but I loved that show until the last episode as well. I remember you showed it to me when I was younger, in my preteen ages, and I remember watching like every single episode within a couple weeks. And you get to that last episode, and you're like, damn.
And we'll do like top 5 TV shows of all time, or like top 5 TV comedies, top 5 TV, because you could put, and I don't think they're as binge worthy, but I mean, they're definitely good. Like Sopranos and Deadwood and Boardwalk Empire. I just don't think there is much binge worthy where you're going to just sit down and just binge your way right through them. Like you will these other shows. Real quick, we can talk. We got some matchups coming up. We've been on here a while, so anything jump out at you? Cowboys Falcons to me, like that's a must-win game for the Cowboys. The Falcons, they've got a little bit more wiggle room. But
Yeah,
I think
I think Cowboys Falcons is a good one. Lions Packers, especially if Lions Packers, whoever wins that game is leading the North.
Yeah.
So if Jordan Love plays, that's a big game. So I think that's probably the game of the week if Jordan Love plays. Chiefs Bucks, that's a good game. I think that the Chiefs are going to win that, but are they going to stay undefeated? That's kind of the storyline. And then the other big one, Dolphins Bills. Tua is going against a team that gave him his most recent concussion. So
yeah, that Dolphins at the Bills. I mean, the Dolphins are getting the Bills early, so they're not going up there in the late in the season when it's freezing cold and whatever else. And me and you have been in Buffalo when it's not warm, and it's not a fun place to play. Matthew and I went to the Win game back in, what was that, 2021, where Mac Jones only threw 3 passes and the Pats won. Matter of fact, I looked up a stat the other day. Actually, I figured it out myself. Since the Win game, the Patriots were I think like 8-3 or 7-3 after that game. Since the Win game, the Patriots are 15-31.
Pretty terrible.
So you're flying high and
not so much
now. Anyway, I think Rams and Seahawks, that's a big game.
Yeah.
Commanders at the Giants. Commanders won earlier when they didn't. Remember, that's the game that the Giants were idiots and didn't have another kicker when their kicker was hurt and missed and scored 3 touchdowns and lost when the Commanders only kicked field goals. So I mean, there's definitely some good matchups this week. It's going to be separate. Now we're starting getting into like separation time.
No, I agree.
Like you said, if the Packers win, they're in first place in that division. Think about this: if the Packers beat the Lions, okay, they're 7-2. Lions are 6-2. If the Commanders beat the Giants, they're 7-2. Are the Commanders going to be first in the NFC?
They might be. It depends on how many divisional opponents they beat, like how many conference.
No, conference.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they'll be in first because the Commanders will be 5-1 in the conference, and the Packers will be 3-2. Yeah, that'll be crazy.
That would be crazy.
Going from the number 2 overall pick to number 1 in the conference potentially. So we got some good games. Once again, we appreciate you guys for checking us out. We it's our 3rd episode. I think we're getting a little bit better. I got a better setup tonight. Set my office up here at home. So we're going to try to bring this to you weekly. If you like what you see, please give us please subscribe, comment, because it does help the algorithm. Tell some friends, share this with your friends, and hopefully we can get some more of our co-hosts on in the future, and so we can kind of mix it up a little bit. Matthew, I appreciate you doing this with me every week. I think it's been fun, and being able to talk about especially the NFL that we love, and some of the top 5 stuff has been interesting just to see what your takes on certain things are.
No, I agree.
So that's it for this week. We'll be back next week. Thank you again for watching Generational Talent. I'm Chris.
I'm Matthew.
And we'll catch you next week.